Every country on Earth is in debt. Not some, not most. All of them. The United States owes more money than it has ever owed in history. Europe is buried under trillions. Japan's debt is larger than its entire economy. Even oil-rich nations and export giants carry enormous obligations. So here's the question no one ever answers clearly. If everyone owes money, who is actually being paid? Because debt, at a global level, doesn't work the way personal debt does. There is no final bill, no last payment, and no clear creditor waiting at the end. Welcome to the Finance Foundation, where money, power, and history collide, and nothing is ever as simple as it looks. Today, the world is drowning in more than $315 trillion in total debt, nearly 3 times the size of the global economy. Governments owe it, corporations owe it, households owe it, and yet, the system continues to function. Debt isn't just a burden anymore. It's the architecture of the modern world. Every war, every boom, every recession, every financial crisis is built on this invisible scaffolding of IOUs. And if you follow the chain of creditors long enough, you discover something unsettling. The world doesn't owe money to anyone in particular. It owes it to itself. But that doesn't mean everyone benefits equally. To understand how we reached this point, we have to go back, not to Wall Street, not to Silicon Valley, but to war. In 1694, England was fighting France. The war was expensive. Gold was running out. So the crown did something revolutionary. Instead of raising taxes immediately or seizing wealth, the king turned to merchants and bankers. He offered them a deal. Lend me money today, and I'll pay you interest forever, backed by future taxes. To manage this arrangement, a new institution was created, the Bank of England. For the first time in history, a government could spend money it didn't yet have. And lenders received something priceless. A promise from the state. A promise that could be traded, sold, or used as collateral. That promise became the government bond. France copied the idea. The Netherlands refined it. The newly independent United States adopted it to fund its revolution and later, its westward expansion. National debt was no longer a sign of weakness. It became a sign of credibility. The ability to borrow became the ability to rule. Empires once conquered land to extract gold. Now they issued bonds to extract interest. The battlefield had moved from land to ledgers, from soldiers to balance sheets. Fast forward 3 centuries. Debt is no longer a tool. It's the engine. The United States now owes over $38 trillion. Japan owes more than 250% of its GDP. And global borrowing increases by roughly $1 trillion every 100 days. Every country owes. Every bank lends. Every citizen, through taxes, pensions, and savings, is both a debtor and a creditor. So who holds the other end of the rope? Let's start with the United States, because its debt isn't just national. It's global. Out of the U.S. national debt, roughly half is publicly held, meaning it's owned by investors rather than by other government agencies. About 2/3 of those investors are American. Banks, pension funds, mutual funds, insurance companies, and the Federal Reserve itself. The remaining third, around $9 trillion, is held by foreign countries. Japan holds the most. China is second. Then come the UK, Luxembourg, and Belgium. So yes, the US owes China money, but only about 2% of its total debt. Most of America's debt is owed to America. The Treasury issues bonds. Banks buy them. The Federal Reserve often buys them back, creating new dollars in the process. Americans pay taxes. Those taxes fund interest payments. Those payments flow into American retirement accounts. It's a closed loop, a financial mirror. The debt is real, but the creditor is mostly the same system looking back at itself. And this circular structure isn't unique to the US. Japan lends to the US through treasuries. The US lends to Europe through the IMF. Europe lends to developing nations through the World Bank. Developing nations lend back by parking reserves in Western bonds. Every country holds someone else's IOU. Every promise is backed by another promise. It's like a poker table where every player borrowed chips from the next. And the only rule keeping the game alive is that nobody stands up. But there's another layer, one more powerful than governments themselves. Behind every government bond is a vast web of institutions. Hedge funds, pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, central banks. They manage tens of trillions of dollars. They decide who borrows cheaply and who pays a premium just to survive. When they lose confidence, currencies collapse, governments fall, entire economies are restructured overnight. Democracy decides who governs. Markets decide who survives. And sitting at the center of this system is the modern high priest of finance, the central bank. Central banks don't just manage debt, they create it. When a central bank buys government bonds, it doesn't use existing money. It creates new money. One balance sheet's liability becomes another's asset. Every dollar in circulation represents debt somewhere else. There is no such thing as debt-free money. Every bill, every coin, every digital dollar carries an invisible IOU. For decades, this system has survived on one thing: confidence. As long as investors believe governments will keep paying interest, even if the principal is never repaid, the machine keeps turning. But when confidence breaks, we've seen it before. Greece, 2010. Debt became unpayable. Bond yields exploded. Bailouts arrived, with austerity, higher taxes, spending cuts, mass unemployment. An entire generation paid the price. Argentina defaulted again and again. Sri Lanka ran out of foreign currency, triggering fuel shortages and political collapse. When the system breaks, creditors suddenly become visible. The IMF, rating agencies, anonymous bondholders. And yet, after every collapse, the same logic returns. New loans replace old ones. Debt is restructured. The machine resets. Because modern debt was never designed to be repaid. Governments don't plan to pay off their debt. Not now. Not ever. That's not a conspiracy. It's policy. Unlike households, governments refinance. They issue new bonds to pay off old ones. Debt becomes a rolling subscription. Interest becomes the product. The global economy depends on that interest, like a shark that must keep swimming to breathe. Japan has been rolling over its debt for decades. The U.S. will never clear its $38 trillion balance. And investors aren't waiting to be repaid. They're waiting to renew the deal. Because government debt isn't seen as a liability. It's seen as the safest asset on earth. If the U.S. somehow paid off every dollar of its debt, global markets would lose their safest collateral. The money supply would shrink. Deflation would follow. The system would collapse. Debt is the foundation of modern finance. So governments don't eliminate it. They manage it. They keep it believable. When politicians talk about paying down the debt, they're selling comfort, not reality. The goal isn't zero debt. The goal is sustainable trust. Because once belief fades, numbers stop matching. When we say we owe it to ourselves, that's only half true. Interest flows upward, from workers and taxpayers, to institutions and investors. Debt isn't just a transfer between nations. It's a transfer between classes. That's why global debt and global inequality rise together. Creditors aren't villains. Debtors aren't victims. They're two sides of the same engine. The danger comes when the engine runs out of fuel. When new borrowing can't keep pace with old promises. That's when debt stops being abstract and becomes personal. At the top of the global debt pyramid, there isn't one enemy to blame. Not China. Not Wall Street. Not the IMF. It's all of them. And us. Debt has become money. Money has become trust. And trust has become the most valuable asset on earth. As long as belief holds, the system survives. When it breaks, the illusion ends. Because debt, in the end, is just a promise. And no promise can last forever. If this changed the way you see the world, subscribe to the Finance Foundation. History already wrote the answers. I'll show you where to look.